Alright everyone, giving advice to your political enemies is not usually a wise thing to do, but if they're too stupid to take the advice repeatedly and incessantly, you can make a video about it because it's all good. And that's what I would advise the Biden admin is, there are a handful of liberal commentators, the more intelligent ones, the non-leftoid commentators. They may be stuffy NIMBYs with NPR and PBS cups who turn their thermostat down 2 degrees and think that they're saving the world by doing so, while bitching about the nuclear power plant that they want to put in next door. But they do have the right idea with regards to political strategy in the sense of branding the Biden campaign. Biden's big problem, there really is no solution. They are proposing the better of two bad outcomes, effectively. He has two choices with the current administration. He can stick to his liberal guns. Again, boring NIMBYists will love that. Huzzah! Marginal change in CO2 emissions and all these other wonderful things. Save the squirrels and save the turtles, donate more to PBS, public broadcasting needs your help. You can stick with that, or you can wine and dine the far left, and you can't really do both. The problem is that the administration has been doing the latter without apparently realizing that you've got a juxtaposition here. Here's the rub. Let me try to explain. Liberals and leftoids have been sort of fair-weathered friends generally for a while. So the Dem Party built the broad umbrella sort of platform. And it encompassed liberal, like neoliberal individuals, so again, the NPR cupware wielders, and the far left. And normally, if the party is under the control of the neoliberals, they'll promise things to the leftoids that they're woke and they seem progressive on paper. Yeah, we want to give more money to the poor and, more this, that, and the other thing, Green New Deal, and the leftoids vote for them. And then they forget about them the second that election day is over and they sort of just push them aside. But they've become more numerous, they've become more vocal, and they've become more activistic, especially among the youth. Each generation of liberal politicians, we're using liberal, by the way, for those in Europe, I realize that liberal means something else over in European countries. Here we use it for shorthand for generally Democrats, not entirely, but generally, people who support more government, more welfare and stuff like that. But they're not leftoids. I consider them left the same way I consider most conservatives to be left-leaning. I think that if you have a 40% federal tax rate, that is a liberal economic policy, a left-wing economic policy, rather. I think it should be far lower for all echelons of society, and most of the rules and bureaucracy should die. I think they should just go away. It would be a better country. I think being more free is something that generally, if put that way, most Americans would agree upon. They seem to have a differentiation on what free means. There's where partisan politics exists in the first place. But they're not far left, they're not AOC or Bernie Sanders. And so the problem is that right now you have just the right unique conditions under which you have a number of social issues that are combining together like a perfect storm, in which Biden has to go through the Scylla and Charybdis that is politics within the Democratic Party and try to really straddle that line, and it ain't working. The problem is that the left wants everything and it wants it now, and they will shout at you if they don't get it. The liberals also want something. They're not in favor of an open border. They're not in favor of the current economy with Bidenflation. There's no wiggle room for Biden to straddle that line. What he therefore tries to do is maintain a generally neoliberal policy while talking to the far left and giving them little token gifts of appreciation like the student loan debt grift that'll go nowhere. But they're not satisfied. They've finally gotten to the point where they're like, hey, they finally realized the Democratic Party doesn't even really like them except for that 48-hour period in which they're voting. Other than that, they can go to hell. And they finally realized that, and they're causing problems for Biden. His way forward is very, very much dichotomous. Snap back to neoliberalism, tell the left to calm its ass down, and show your ass to them. You lose the election because you lose the youth vote. They'll flock to Trump, as apparently they already are. It's very interesting. The demographics have reversed. The old people used to all vote Republican, and the youth typically voted Democrat. It's actually beginning to invert right now. Trump is supposedly ahead among voters under 35. This has not happened in a long time, at least since the Reagan youth of the early 1980s. This has not been a thing for a while. My generation is hardly ingrained to see the Republicans as the party of corporate influence and old people. But that's the Democrats now. They've absorbed that unipartyist core, to the point where Bush probably voted for Biden himself, probably voted for Hillary Clinton. Notice there was never any endorsement of Orange Man there. It's funny, it's like an early 80s redux. We've even got one of the magnates of the early 80s as the Republican Party nominee. Look at old reels of Trump from that era of time and tell me that isn't fucking hilarious. But he can also go in another direction. Biden could say, well, come on, man, I'm going to give the left more and try to calm them down. That's a bad idea. And the commentators here and elsewhere, they're warning him not to do that. Maher is warning him. Jimmy Dore is warning him. Other neoliberal commentators that have some sense of strategery, they're warning him, don't do that. The problem is that he's Joe Biden, so he might actually be crazy enough to do that. If you give them an inch, they want a foot. If you then say, okay, well, would you accept a half a foot? Well, you just gave us more than an inch. Now we want 3 feet. That's the way that the far left tends to work. That's why they don't do well at negotiating. There was an article the other day talking about the rise of the leftoids and how even though they have all this fervor and really hardcore centralized activism and they've got significant numbers in certain places, they even lose in far left districts. The sort of the momentum that you had building up a far-left cohort within Congress, for example, with originally the Gang of Four and then the Geek Squad, like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and the others, Ariana Presley and the others, has stalled out, actually. The neoliberals are fighting back and fairly effectively because they simply, numerically, they're superior. This vexes the far left. Biden's natural inclination, I think, would be to try to wine and dine them back aboard. But the problem is that the policies that he's focusing on have nothing to do with the mainline policies that are in focus for the average liberal or left-leaning independent. The leftoids like those gestures, although they never go far enough. You'd have to go 10 times further to appease them, crippling his candidacy. But neoliberals, they do pay taxes. They do generally pump their own gas. Some of them are seeing the effects of the migrant crisis in their communities and not just in the southern regions of the United States. How can he address these then effectively? If he were to clamp down on the border appeasing those neoliberals, the left would call him a bigot. They would call him a bigot and say he was racist. He hates Mexican people. They've done this a number of times. If he were to control inflation and screw around with the economy a little bit more, they'd be rambling about student loan debt, saying, well, you're making the economy worse, Mr. President. Where's our freebies? Where's my Gives Me Dads? Well, it doesn't work. Liberals are notifying Joe Biden they're not going to be appeased at all. Go with the neoliberals. That's 80% of your party anyway. You're going to need them to be reelected. You can't alienate people for much longer because we're getting on towards June. He's oblivious to this. Watching the train wreck that is the Biden presidency in its final hour is astonishing, actually. I've never seen such an incompetent administration. Even some Bush-era officials at least were coherent. Bush was, when he was antagonized in any way, he dropped the method acting. You'll note that. One last aside, has nothing to do with Biden. Have you ever seen the tape of Bush in the adversarial interview? I think it might have been CNN that was interviewing him and grilling him really hard. He's very, very well spoken, very calculated, and even his body language changes when he's antagonized. He's a very good speaker. He is not dumb. He's just evil. He played dumb on TV in order to get away with his evilness. Biden is the opposite. He's fucking retarded. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he plays an intelligent man on TV after they shoot him full of Adderall or whatever the hell CIA drug they have him on. That's about all. Peace out.